Thank
Hello,
you so much for having me.
you're welcome. Well, first of all, I want to ask you about your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, those kinds of things, and then we'll start talking about your book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
I was born and raised in Southern California, or as like people like to call it, sunny California. Um, I graduated high school in 2008,
Mhm.
and I did the whole community college thing. I studied theater and humanities when I was in community college, and then I transferred to California State Channel Islands and got my bachelor's degree in theater. And trying to be an actor was rough. And so I spent the next 5 years just trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then early childhood education just kind of fell into my lap. I had a friend call me and say, "Hey, I know the director at this preschool and they're looking for an assistant. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? Let's work with kids. Let's see how that goes." Um, Lo and behold, 5 years later, and I am now fully qualified infant toddler teacher. I've been doing this 5 years. I went back to school and I got my double degree in early childhood education and early childhood development. And I wrote my first children's book.
That's awesome. For you, what is the most rewarding thing about working with the little ones? Because they are so interesting.
So, with the little ones, we see a lot of firsts that we don't see if you're in, say, preschool or pre-K or TK. Because
Right.
when I first started out, I was in pre-K. So I was with 3 and 4 year olds. Now that I'm working with 1 year olds, we see their first steps, we see their first words, and the cuddles and the love. It is the most fulfilling job I have ever had.
Wow. And see, I work with kids too. And just that, especially with the little ones, I mean, just everything is so new to them and they get
It
excited
is.
over learning. And whenever they do something new, they get really excited about it. So I can see exactly where you're coming from. It's just really special being able to work with little
Mhm.
ones.
It is. It's the best. I love them. I love my babies.
Aw. Now tell me, what inspired you to write your book?
All right. So there's a story here.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready for that.
Okay. Okay. So, Buddy, the bearded dragon, I was with a man for a long time, and he decided that he was going to get a bearded dragon.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Bearded dragon?" I was like, "Don't most people get like a dog or a cat, you know?" And so he goes through with getting the bearded dragon, and slowly but surely, I fell in love with this animal. This animal was my soul animal, and me and this man, we ended up breaking up, and he decided to keep Buddy,
Oh,
which crushed me, obviously. So 2 years ago, um, this guy texts me and he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know Buddy passed away in his sleep."
oh,
And I was obviously beside myself. I was upset, I was angry, I was upset I wasn't the one that was there when he passed. And I realized over the course of like a week after he told me, I wasn't dealing with the death properly. And I remember I was driving home from work one day and I thought, "Buddy, Buddy, Buddy the bearded dragon." I'm like, "I'm a preschool teacher. This is there's some I'm gonna write a kid's book." I was like, I need to show the world our story, because even though Buddy and I were only together for a short time, it was a beautiful relationship. And I wanted to just tell the world. I wanted to just say, "Hey, like this is what it's like to love a pet.
now
Why
what was
not
it?
put it into a children's book?"
What was it like? I mean, did he have like a distinct personality that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, so all bearded dragons, people call them the dogs of lizards because they're so hilarious. And Buddy was just my guy. He was feisty and sassy, but he also was the sweetest. I would call him mommy's baby.
Oh,
And and he would fall asleep just anywhere on me. And he basically became my emotional support animal. I mean, and he was
wow.
just hilarious. And he did this funny thing where he would always jump onto his plant and he would just fall like on his back and he would just like do it over and over. And I was like, what are you doing? Doesn't that hurt? He was really funny.
Wow. Now, how old was he when he passed?
I
What was his lifespan?
So bearded dragons typically, depending on care and the overall health of a bearded dragon, they can live anywhere from 7 to 13.
Oh, wow.
Now, Buddy, yeah, they live a long time for smaller reptiles, but Buddy was about 8, 8.5 when he had passed away. So he was on the younger spectrum of the ages, but yeah, that's what happens.
Do you have any fun facts about bearded dragons you'd like to share?
I do actually. Okay, so I found an article a few years ago and I thought this was really interesting. So bearded dragons are from Australia. And so these scientists in Australia did a sleep study on them, and bearded dragons actually fall into REM sleep,
Hmm.
which means bearded dragons have dreams.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I thought that was so cool. And so now every time I pass by my lizard sleeping, I'm always like against the glass. I'm like, are you dreaming about worms? What are you
Oh.
dreaming about?
Okay, so now tell us about your new the dragon that you have now.
Okay, so his name is Jober, and my stepson named him. And what's funny is when I he's well, so I'm engaged. So when I had met my now fiance, he had already had a bearded dragon.
Wow.
Yeah,
How ironic.
right. So I was like, wow, match made in heaven. It's done.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Well,
and
tell
Jober's funny. He's a funny guy. Yeah, they all have their unique personalities.
um do you recognize any similarities between Buddy and your new dragon at all?
Um, Honestly, I'm gonna be honest. No,
So they're totally different.
they're totally different personalities. Jober is extremely wild, and he crawls up and down and jumps off couches and does all this stuff, where Buddy was kind of lazy.
Wow.
So yeah.
Okay, now tell me about the process of writing your book. How long did it take you to get the manuscript done? And then how long did it take you to for the publication process? What was that whole thing like? Because I know it
So
varies for different books and different genres and different people. So tell me, what was that whole
oh yeah.
process like for you, Greta?
So the whole book from start to finish took a year.
Hmm.
And within that year, it was me obviously writing the book. And my process of writing is, and once again, I'm a first time author. I I knew nothing going into this. I mean, I have pages and pages of research, of handwritten research, of everything that I need to do. So I'm
Hmm.
like, this is so crazy. Like, I didn't know I need an ISBN number. Like, who knows what that is? But I had to get one. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So, um, so it was like I would write a sentence and then I would write the illustration, sentence, illustration, sentence, illustration.
Hmm.
And then I would go back. So you keep going back and back and back, and you're fixing things and fixing. I probably had the book done, but I kept going back and fixing things. So that's kind of what took the longest.
Hmm.
And
The
then I found
revisions.
I actually outsourced my editor and my illustrator on that website Fiverr.
I was going to
And
ask you about the illustrator and stuff too.
yes, yeah, Fiverr. It's an amazing website. I mean, you meet the most talented people from all over the globe.
Wow.
Um, so I got my editor, who's like this woman in Germany, and she was super sweet and super helpful. She actually helped me um like fix the ending of my book and
Okay, let
make
me
it
pause
make
for a second.
sense.
My phone.
Sure.
Forgot to turn
Oh,
my
you're good.
phone. Yeah, this will make it okay. There we go. Off with you. There you go. I'm gonna turn my ringer down. Okay, that's my first podcast that's been interrupted by a phone call because I always remember to turn it off and I didn't turn it off. So shame on me. Okay, go ahead.
Hey,
You were saying now.
I'm gonna say that that's a good sign.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. All right. So you were saying, I'm
Um,
sorry for interrupting you.
oh no, you're good. You're good. No, so my editor actually helped me revise the whole different ending of my book. Like
Hmm.
basically the entire shift of my book changed because of her. And she made everything made sense. It was crazy. All of my thoughts that I had, she like just made for me. And I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly what I was trying to accomplish. Thank you." And then my illustrators, I mean, I can't even talk about them without getting emotional. They are wonderful. They're these two brothers in Bulgaria, and it took 3.5 months to illustrate the book. And they copied my reference photos because every illustration in my book is a real photo of Buddy and I.
Oh,
And they replicated them perfectly. When I got the first draft back of the illustrations, I was probably hysterically crying for about an hour because the ending of the book was the ending that I had wished for Buddy and I.
hmm.
And I finally have that in book form now. So it was emotional getting those illustrations back. And then once the illustrations got back, I found my publisher and once again, research. I
Hmm.
researched everything, all different publishers. You did mention Amazon earlier,
Yes.
and I realized I didn't want to do Amazon because they end up owning everything and
Right.
it's really hard to take out. And I was like, I want to own 100% of my book. So I went with BookBaby and I'm using their print on demand program. And it's wonderful because I don't have to have 500 books sitting in my garage. Um, so that was basically the process. And also getting into the initial BookBaby publishing company. Um, all of this costs money.
Right.
Everything costs money. So what I did was I started an Indiegogo page. I started a crowdfunding page. And I spent all 2 summers ago raising money from friends and family to help me publish my first book. And in return, they got a signed copy. And I ended up raising a lot of money in 1 week. And I got to get my book published. I got to purchase my copyright. I got to purchase my ISBN numbers. And it was an incredible year. And I can't wait to do it all over again with book two.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you too if you're going to if there's another book coming.
I'm almost done writing it.
Congratulations. Oh my
Thank
goodness.
you.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, what a journey. This is probably one of the
Yeah,
most unique journeys I've heard from an author. This is just incredible. So, did have you always had the writing bug in you at all?
so I would like to say no, but then I went onto my old laptop. You know, when you find those old laptops, you open it up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to see what's on here. And I went into my old Word documents. It's my laptop from high school.
Hmm.
And I have actually two like long stories on there that I wrote that I forgot that I wrote.
Wow.
Um, because in college, I know it's different, but in college, I hated writing papers. I was like, even though I was a theater major and I was writing, play analysis and I was writing about like Henrik Ibsen and like, but yeah, just I never knew that this was going to be the journey for me. And that's just life. And it's just crazy and wonderful. And I cannot wait to do this all over again with my second book.
Have you had an opportunity to read your book in front of kids and to groups of little ones? And if you have, what's that
I have,
experience
I
been
have,
like?
I have, since I do have the advantage of working at a preschool.
Right.
And I was a nanny. I quit teaching for a year and I was a nanny. Yeah, my journey's been all over the place. um, but yes, and the feedback that I get is so heartwarming and just leaves me speechless because these children end up falling in love with Buddy just as much as I already am. And I also in the book, I have some interactive questions. I tried to make it so kids could answer questions back.
Hmm.
And the questions that I ask, they're just so eager to answer. And also, a few weeks ago, I did my very first book selling event at this massive street fair that's
Hmm.
like right down the street from my house. And I had my first table and I sold almost all of my books. And I had the most amazing feedback from just my community.
Wow.
Like people just kept walking past my table and they were reading my sign, Buddy the bearded dragon, what? And I didn't realize how many people actually have bearded dragons and how popular these pets have become in the last few years that it just like fueled me. And I knew in that moment that this was like what I was meant to do. I was like, I gotta keep pumping these Buddy the bearded dragon books out.
That's incredible. Now tell me, in terms of age range, what's the typical age range for your readers?
So online, the book says it's from 4 to 8, but I've that's flexible. I've read my book to 2-year-olds and they have been obsessed with it.
Uh-huh.
And my almost 11-year-old stepson, like, he read the book and he loves it.
That's
So
amazing.
it's appropriate for anybody who wants to read, but uh, technically 4 to 8.
Now, have you thought about, oh, especially with your acting background, have you thought about doing like an audio version or a video version of your book?
Um, I have not thought about that. Um, the only thing that's come up is people have come up to me and have wanted to translate my book in another language.
Hmm.
But I'm not even ready for that aspect yet because that is a whole other ball
Mm,
game when it comes
yes.
to getting your book translated for other countries. Because like the money's different, like everything's different. Like you have to like get a lawyer for that. And I was like, what?
There is a lot that goes into this people don't realize.
They don't.
I mean,
It's
I've had,
amazing.
yeah, especially when you're an indie author trying to do everything on your own, and it's not easy. And
It
so
is not. It is not.
I hear your story, and I compare them to the stories of other authors that I've had, and it's a true labor of love to
Yeah,
do this. I mean, you have to really love doing it, and just love writing and just the whole process of storytelling, because especially when you're doing a picture book, you have to think about what you're saying, but then also the pictures have to coincide with the
exactly.
words. And so
And
everything's got to gel.
yeah. And another thing is I read a few articles of children's authors when I was doing my initial research, and what really stuck in my mind is do not overcomplicate your story.
Right.
You are a children's book author. Make it simple, make it to the point, and the kids will love it.
Yes. So in other words, you're not gonna put a Shakespeare soliloquy in your children's book.
No,
They're not gonna
no,
get
no,
that.
no. And I realized that actually when I'm in the middle of writing the second book and I had to delete so many things. I'm like, delete. I'm like, Greta, what are you doing? I'm like, the kids aren't gonna care. The kids aren't gonna care about this little detail. But that's what we have to do. We
Yes.
have to do.
Tell me, in your own words and in just the fiber of your being, what has been the greatest thing about this journey for you?
Knowing how many people love Buddy and who now know our story. That was my whole goal with this book. This was a true passion project.
And well, it certainly seems like it. And just think of how many kids and even adults who are
Mm,
reading it with their kids, how inspired they're going to be by what you've written and telling your
yeah.
story. I mean, that's incredible.
I mean that, yeah, that was the whole goal. And, you know, in the very beginning of the book, um, I actually I actually wrote a friendly PSA,
Hmm.
just letting people know that if you do want to get a bearded dragon, especially after reading this book, I wanted people to know that it is just as high maintenance as a dog, cat, rabbit, bird. You know, bearded dragons need to be watered every day. They need to be bathed once a week. They need to have fresh lettuce almost every single day. Like, this is not, they need to get taken out of their tank. They need to exercise. They need to run around, you know. So that was really important to me that people didn't just start randomly buying these thinking, oh, it'll be fun to have a bearded dragon. It's like,
Right.
no, like it's work. It is not a low maintenance animal.
And what else do they eat?
So they eat crickets, super worms, silkworms, those like bright turquoise worms that are just, oh my goodness. They eat they eat I've had bearded dragons what for 9 years now, and you do not get used to the eating. Oh, um, dooby roaches, and I think it as far as protein. I don't know. Other people might feed them other weird stuff, but that's like the main protein. And then for like non-protein stuff, they love dandelion greens, mustard greens. They really like blueberries and raspberries, strawberries, but fruit is like once a month
Hmm.
because fruit can actually inhibit the calcium in their body.
Oh, wow.
So, and if they don't have calcium, they'll get metabolic bone disease, which is really, really common in bearded dragons, and it's really gnarly and really scary. So,
Hmm.
also when you feed them, you have to put calcium powder and multivitamin powder on all their food.
Wow. So
Oh
they
yeah, it's
need,
a lot.
and nutrition is very important for them.
It's extremely important because they can get respiratory infections, they could get the metabolic bone disease. Now, I am not a vet. This is just this is just what I've been doing research on in the last 9 years. But yeah, and it's worked for my bearded dragon. So,
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you too, looking back on everything now, going back to your journey growing up and then going through acting and then changing careers and working in early childhood education and now being an author, what do you think you would go back and tell your younger self?
oh my goodness. Um, let's see. I would tell my younger self, don't get into acting. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Uh, um, oh man, I wish I had an answer for you. I kind of don't like looking at the past. I feel like right now, everything that I have done has led me to exactly where my life is right now, and I wouldn't change anything. I all of the people that I've met, all of the education that I've done, all of the weird, random, odd jobs that I've had, it has made me who I am. And I had a wonderful childhood, and yeah.
Well, I've never asked myself that question, but thinking about it now, if I did meet up with my younger self somehow, I would
Hmm.
tell my younger self everything's going to be okay. No matter what struggles you have,
Yeah.
especially if you knew you couldn't change the history, if you couldn't
Yeah.
change what happened, I would tell my younger self everything's going to be okay. No matter what trials and tribulations you go through, everything's going to be okay. I think
I
that's
like
what I would
that.
tell my younger self.
I like that. Yeah, I could go back and do that. I could say, hey, Greta, everything's going to be okay. All of the schooling you're going to do, you're going to be stressed, but don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
That'll be our motto for this podcast. Everything will
Yes.
be okay.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Well said, Greta. Well, I have enjoyed talking to you immensely. This has been so fun. You're so interesting, and congratulations on your upcoming marriage. That I know you must be totally stoked and thrilled about
Oh
that.
my gosh, we're so excited.
That's
Thank you
awesome.
so much for having me on here. This has
You're
been awesome.
welcome. You're welcome. Well,
This
thank
is
you
my
for
first
writing your book.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, Buddy the Bearded Dragon. This is my first podcast, by the way.
Well, thank you for coming on. Oh, I wanted to
Oh,
ask you before I forget too. Do you have a website for your book? And just tell us all of the sellers where your book can be found.
so I don't have an official website, but I do have my Buddy the Bearded Dragon book Instagram page, which I
Right.
just tell everybody to follow me on there because I post all my updates on there. I'm very active on there.
Hmm.
And you can get my book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, and Walmart. It's only online right now. I'm working on getting it into stores. But yeah, right now it's sold out on Amazon. But you can still put your order in. My publisher will just see the order and they'll start printing more books. But yeah.
And I will make sure to put the link to your Instagram page and the show
Oh,
notes too.
perfect.
So that is
Awesome.
awesome. So Greta, thank you so very much for doing the podcast. You are a wonderful guest, and I just wish you the best of luck. And hopefully, you can come on and talk about your second book.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are Instagram friends, so you will definitely see when the second book comes out.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. So, Greta, thanks
Awesome.
again so much for coming on, and the listeners I know will love this episode. So, thank you so much.
Thank you again for having me. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you. You too. All right. So,
Thank
everyone,
you.
with that, that is the end of this episode of the Total Podcast with me, your host, Phil Scott. Everyone stay safe, be careful out there, take care of one another, and we will talk again soon.